I am so grateful to Wouter for being here today. I met him way too many years ago now at Natural Encounters, where he was a trainer for a long time and highly regarded there, as well as being at the lead trainer at the Columbus Zoo and now part of two major organizations which he runs. And some of you met him at our wellness retreat this last year, so you know what a terrific guy he is. So we're really grateful to you, Wouter, for being here. And he's talking to us today from Kansas because he just moves all over the country helping zoos and different people. But he's a train the trainer kind of guy these days. But since everything you do with your bird is training, he's training you to be the trainer of your bird. So it's perfect. So thank you again, Wouter. I'm going to go off video and turn it over to you. And we'll see you at the end for a Q&A.
Well, yeah, we'll see you at the end for questions and anything else. Well, guys, thank you. And Anne, thank you for the invite. It's been it was great fun during the retreat to meet everybody. And we're going to talk a little bit about shaping today. Like Anne said, you know, everything you do with your animal is really training and behavior. And so we're gonna go to some of the basic ways that we use shaping, one of the training techniques in what we do in our day-to-day work. When I go travel around the US and often around the world, we do a lot shaping behavior with a lot of different species. So for us, it goes across species lines. I'm in Wichita, Kansas right now at a great facility, the Tanganyika Wildlife Park, where we shape behavior of a lot of birds, but also a lot of mammals and a lot of carnivores and omnivores. And you can't think of it, and we shape in behavior, even people, because that's what we do. But before we start talking about shaping, I just want to make sure that we are all on the same line, speaking the same language. We are basing all of our training in this science of behavior change. There's a huge science behind everything that I'm talking about, and there's a lot of people out there that have a lot more knowledge about it. I really focus on the application and teaching the application of the science of behavior change. And so I'm more of a hands-on guy. If you want to talk to a really great behavior analyst, scientist, and a great person that applies it really well, it's of course Dr. Susan Friedman, who we've all heard about. Behavior 360 or Behavior Works is her company. Behavior 360 is my company. Rick Hester, they're all great science people out there that check them out because they have amazing science background, even more than I have. So when we talk about behavior, I always start by making sure that we all know what it is. We want to make sure that we all look at the animal's behavior in the same way. Behavior is what an animal does under certain conditions that can be measured. So it's what he does. It's not really what he's thinking or feeling or anything else. When we're training, we're really just looking for what the animal is doing. It's easy to get into that lineup, oh, he's doing this because of this, and really focus on ideas of why they're doing it. But when we are great trainers and we really want to be clear communicators to our animals, we want to make sure that we focus on what the animals do, not so much what they think, something that we can measure. And behavior doesn't happen in a vacuum. It doesn't happen by itself. It doesn't just pop out. Behavior always is preceded by antecedents. Antecedents are conditions that immediately precede the behavior that are related to it occurring. So what happens before the behavior? What sets the stage? How can we arrange the environment to make the right behavior easier than the wrong behavior, really? Antecedents always remind me of going to my niece's play, Ella, and the stage is set. Right before you get to the play, the curtains are closed, but behind the curtains, the set is all set up. Everybody is in their places and all that set. So the antecedents are arranged for the play to start. The antecedents are arranged for the right behavior, performing the play, to be easier than the wrong behavior, probably playing a basketball game or something like that. So we focus on arranging our environment well first. So when you think about your bird in their enclosure, if you want to work on a nail trim behavior and you want to do that from the outside, you might place a perch nice close to the place where you want to be. So it's easier for your bird to sit on the perch in that spot than to hang on the wire. and we can set up our environment a little bit better that way. Antecedents set the occasion for behavior to occur. They don't cause behavior to happen, but they set the stage for behavior to occur. And then besides the antecedents, there's a lot of other things we can do. Like when you look at this picture, I like this picture when we talk about antecedent arrangement. Those goats under that feed us sign on the right-hand side, that's at Brookfield Zoo. And those are great trainers that before they even saw the problem, they had solved it with antecedent arrangement. When you think about a goat yard, we've been to zoos, we've been to those areas where you can feed the goats. Often, when you walk in, the goats mob you. They come all around, and goats are smart. So really quickly, they will figure out that if somebody walks in with a small cup of food and I hit them hard enough, food goes everywhere, right? And so very often do we have goats that start climbing people because they are smart and they've learned that that behavior will earn them consequences. And so what they did at a Brookfield Zoo, they said, we want to have a goat yard, we want to feed the goats, but we also want to have people go in. So they said, well, let's arrange the environment for the right behavior to be easier than the wrong behavior. So let's feed the goats on the outside so people can go on the outside and feed the goats and still have that really cool experience. But there's environments set up from the outside to where the goats can't hit. So the goats stand there patiently because that's the behavior they've been reinforced for, is standing there while food comes towards them. And you can still go in to brush the goats and pet the goats, but you cannot bring food in there. So the environment is arranged well for the goats, and it's arranged well for the people that have two really cool experiences. So there's great example of great antecedent arrangement before the behavior has even happened. The stage has been set for success without even thinking about reinforcers and punishers and all those other consequences. That is the next thing we talk about. As trainers, as caregivers of our animals, we arrange the consequences on the other side of behavior. So antecedents set the stage is set. Behavior in itself doesn't happen in a vacuum, happens with antecedents before it, and then the consequences happen after it. Consequences are events that occur immediately after the behavior that is related to the behavior occurring. So what happens after the behavior that influences that behavior? And so when you look at this hyacinth macaw, this is Grover, I think, at the Great Columbus Zoo. And she has an overgrown beak. She has a lot of medical issues. And due to those medical issues, she can't really chew very well. She couldn't keep her beak up by just chewing enough material. She couldn't hold anything in her feet. So you can see her move around a little bit dicey. But when you look at the behavior of the beak trim, you can see the antecedents are set up. She's sitting on a perch. There's a contraption in front of her with those little bars. The Dremel is in the environment. Those are all antecedents. And then we can see the consequence of this dremeling behavior. So you can see after the dremeling of that maxillary, right, or the mandible, the lower mandible, there was the good, and then there was two pieces of peanut. Those are the consequences to the behavior. Then we can start talking about, are we maintaining increasing behavior or decreasing behavior? And then we can go back and rearrange that environment if it's necessary, if we need to do more to it. We didn't really like that all that dust went into into her open mouth, so we put a little cap between it. So all that dust now hits that and moves away. Antecedent arrangement. We arrange the environment, and then after that, the consequences will maintain that behavior. Often do we ask the questions, how do we get to that behavior of putting his beak around it? How do we tell him to put his beak around it because it's good for them, right? That is where shaping comes in. That is when we start talking about shaping behavior and what are the approximations that we take. So why are these ABCs so important? I always like to talk about the ABCs. Susan taught me this years ago. When we talk about the ABCs, it's important because behavior, like I said, doesn't happen in a vacuum. There's always antecedents before it, and there's always consequences after it. And you saw that we talked about behavior first, because before we even start talking about antecedents and consequences, we have to describe what the behavior is first. So we're all talking about the same thing. So when we talk about antecedents, behavior, consequence, that's the smallest unit of behavior. That is always tied together. And the great thing about it is, why is it such great news? Because antecedents are in our hands and consequences are in our hands. Behavior, we really don't have a lot of influence over, but we can arrange the environment around it. So that gives us, out of the 100% that is, it gives us 33% of the antecedents, 33% of the consequences. So that gives us 66 point, I guess, 66666% of the picture. And that's how we can help set up the environment for behavior to occur. And we can deal with the consequences, deliver consequences after behavior to increase, maintain, or decrease behavior. So that's why I was excited. This is where we're constantly working as caregivers of our animals. So when you know your ABCs and when you look at your ABCs and you look at behavior, you look at, I think this is Barry the penguin, and you look at this behavior of circling, because the first thing we'll have to do is describe what behavior, because there's a lot of behavior going on. She's stepping forward, she's looking up, she's turning around, she's moving closer to Emily's right foot. So to really talk about what is going on in that penguin's, learning environment, we write our ABCs, we do our functional assessment. So the first thing we do, like I said a couple of times, is we look at what the behaviors that we're talking about. So when I talk about Barry the penguin circling, that's the most specific way I can talk about it. What are some of the antecedents? What happens before the behavior that sets up the stage? Well, there's some distant antecedents that have to do with the environment he's in, the grass. He's not with his buddies. The crate is right there. Emily's leaning over. And there's an immediate antecedent. What is really connected to that animal receiving the information in the environment? In this instance, I decided that it's a finger pointing to the right. I thought that was the most immediate antecedent that comes with it. And then the consequence is Barry the penguin gets a fish after that circle. And now that we have that information collected and looked at, we can do a future prediction. We can talk about what is this behavior going to do in the future. And my prediction was Barry will continue to circle when the trainer points a finger. That is, if that fish is a reinforcer. So that gives us a lot of information to talk about Barry. But again, the question often comes up, well, how did you teach him to do that circle? How did we tell him to do that, to circle like that? Where did that come from? Well, that is where shaping behavior comes in. That is when we start talking about setting up the environment, our antecedent arrangement, and our consequence arrangement. How do we deliver reinforcers to actually help that behavior along, shape that behavior? So when you talk about shaping is the procedure of reinforcing successive approximations of a desired behavior. That sounds like a mouthful. Let's get into that, because it's a tool that we use a lot in animal training and in our care of our animals. The approximations are the steps we take towards a final behavior. So when I think about shaping, I think about a full behavior. So when you think about that penguin that did a circle around and then got a reinforcer in the end, for me, that behavior, that is a completed behavior, that's a full loaf of bread. That's the whole loaf of bread that we're working with. And then the approximations are the small steps we take. Those are the slices of bread to get to the end goal. So when you think about the full circle, as a full behavior, one of the approximations, one of the slices of bread is one step to the left, and you get to the reinforcer. And then the next step, the next approximation, next slice of bread is 2 steps to the right. And then it's 3 steps to the right. And so over time, over our approximations, we're building that behavior and we're slicing through that bread. The approximations are those slices of bread until we get the full behavior, and that's the full loaf of bread. Now, we talk about these slices of bread like they're perfectly like this Wonder Bread on the picture. Really, often is it that artesian bread, right? Sometimes you take a big step and sometimes the animal needs a really small step. Once you've taught that penguin to take 1 little step or 2 little steps, and again, it's like Susan teaches so well, it's a study of one, right? It's that one individual in that one moment in time under those conditions. Some animals might take a big step. One penguin might take a step right away, and another one I might have to teach to lean first and then lean a little bit more, maybe turn his beak. And all those approximations get reinforced and we move on to the next step. So sometimes you get a big step and sometimes you get some smaller steps. And the great trainers among us will see when it's time to take a big step and when it's time to take a smaller step, when it's time to take a step back. Shaping and capturing are the two things that stand next to each other. When you talk about capturing, that's why I put it in here, we look at the full loaf of bread and we wait for it to happen. When you look at Steve Martin right here at the ranch during one of the workshops, and you might have been at this workshop, he teaches these beautiful workshops, hands-on stuff, and the science of behavior change right next to it. When you look at the behavior of that Amazon parrot, look at what approximation, remember what slice of bread Steve is reinforcing. Oh, and I forget there's no sound with this. So you can see that little Amazon parrot put his wings out completely. And then he got a treat. And there was no steps taken before that. So that is called capturing. That is when you have the full behavior and you just give it a treat. If you go back to Emily and Barry, that penguin, if Emily stood in front of Barry and Barry all of a sudden did a full circle on his own without any training and you gave him a fish, that would be capturing. That would be capturing the behavior of that full circle. So when we talk about capturing, we look at the full loaf of bread, no slices, you just get the whole loaf and you wait for the whole behavior to happen. When you think about shaping behavior, then you take the smaller approximations. When you think about shaping, remember our ABCs, remember that there are approximations that we can take, and remember that we set up the environment for success and we deliver consequences based on the performance of the behavior. So when you look at the sea lion, and this is at the Wildlife World Zoo in Phoenix, this is Krista Henderson and her wonderful team. And they're teaching this sea lion, I think it's Andy, to do a circle that is basically flat on her belly. And their shaping plan is to go through some approximations. They're not going to capture it. They're not going to wait for Andy to do that full circle. But Renee, the trainer on the right, that has her hand on the ground, and Krista, the trainer on the left, have set up the environment for success. So you can see Krista is using a target, which is great antecedent arrangement. A target Andy has learned to put her nose on that target. And so they're going to go through the approximations of shaping that circle flat on the ground behavior. So the first approximation is right about 6 o'clock, right behind Andy. And you can see now that target is moving further and further down the side, and Andy has to go further and further around to get to that target. And every single one of those approximations got reinforced. So over time, she got reinforced for every single step, and we're building through those approximations, through those slices of bread to get to our end goal. We move to the next approximation, the next step, our next slice, when we see the last approximation without hesitation. We look for fluent behavior. No hesitation is what you'll hear me say as well. When you saw Andy, that sea lion, every one of those approximations, every one of those steps was done without hesitation. So we moved on to the next. That video, of course, is edited together. There's some in there when she doesn't make the approximation, or she might lift her head up. That's when we might relax criteria and come back to an easier approximation to where we can teach her, yeah, just keep your head on the ground. That's what's part of the criteria. We might do another repetition of the approximation if the behavior lacks fluency. So when you see the animal kind of doing it, if you're working your parrot on a foot present and he moves his foot up, but it's kind of slow and he moves it up slowly, I might say, hey, let's do another repetition. The more repetitions do, the more fluent behavior gets. The less hesitation you see in that behavior. Repetition builds confidence. Steve Martin teaches that so well. So when you look at this behavior of these rats, I think this is Gouda, and this is the complete behavior. When you think about, and sorry about that video, guys, that big fat finger in there is my Dutch finger, but this is the only video I had of the completed behavior. This is the full loaf of bread. This is Kaylee Maple, one of the great trainers at the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium, and Gouda, the rat. Here he comes. Excuse me. So that's the complete behavior. Now, when we take our behavior that we want to shape, the swimming part out, we can start thinking about how we would shape that. So swimming across the water is our completed behavior. And how do we shape that? How do we create approximations? Remember our slices of bread to get to that end goal. What we decided to do, there's many different ways to do it. We decided to use a rope that goes all the way across the water. So we teach the rats to go from one spot to the other, from one crate to the next. There's some prerequisite behaviors there already, right? Going from crate to crate. Those are two things that the rats has already learned. Gouda already knows to go from crate to crate. And so for us to take the approximations, many people would say, well, let's keep the crates really close and have him go back and forth and then have him swim a little bit. We decided to use the rope as our approximations, as our steps. So in shaping, the first step we took is to get Gouda across the rope. He already knew to walk across the dry rope. And so there's a wet rope. There's a couple feet right there getting wet. And we look at the performance of the behavior, how he did the behavior, the topography of the behavior. You can see that there was some hesitation, right? We would label it hesitation. He didn't kind of run through it. So when in the training world, when we see some hesitation, we might think about taking another approximation, another step, and might not increase the criteria, but might stay there again because those repetitions will build confidence. So as we took another approximation, or another repetition, I should say, we see a little more fluency. He goes through that water a little more fluent. And once we see fluency, once we see no hesitation, we're going to start moving that rope down a little bit. You can see here, the rope's coming down just a little bit more, and we'll have a little bit more of a behavior. Some people might say, hey, let's do a couple more repetitions, but we saw no hesitation. So we're going to move on. Next step, next approximation. And oops, there's a first time he did a little bit of a swim, a little bit of a bob, but still really good. Great approximation, great step. So we continue on. Now this process happens over like 2 or 3 weeks. So these are all kind of edited together so you can see the approximations that we take. But every training session has our approximations, has our steps. And then we get to this point where Gouda comes out and and we all get there. We all get into that step where all of a sudden the animal is not going past that point anymore, or is not taking the approximation. Don't ever think that any of the cool behaviors you see on TV or other people do or presentations, all that training has gone through some of these setbacks. All that happens to all of us constantly. We'll go there and go, oh, now what do we do at this point? What are the approximations? How can we relax criteria? We always try to do as close to errorless learning, right? As close to the animal never being wrong. But that doesn't mean that when they're wrong, it's a bad thing. This is just a spot where they're not going to get a reinforcer. So I'm one of those guys that goes, oh, I don't know why it happened, and I can throw spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks. But really, and have all these hypotheses, but really the way to check it is do another approximation. Let's try it again, or do another repetition. Let's try that again. Let's see what we get when we get to those approximations. So then we tried it again. We said, okay, and there he goes. We relax criteria. Oop, lifeguard's on duty. Don't worry. You can see that we moved the rope down a little bit or up a little bit, so there wasn't as much swimming. The angles are a little bit less. So we relaxed criteria and we went back in our approximations. We went a slice of bread back. We took one back to where we had to do another repetition because those repetitions will build some confidence. And once we got to that spot, we moved right past it. And we can see that even that swimming moment wasn't that bad of an experience because the behavior just maintained. And the data shows us that that's not too bad. And then we just continue on with the repetitions. You can see we had to put a rock on the rope and we move right from one step to the other. That's the shaping process. When we're shaping, we're really working on the natural variety of behavior, right? We don't do everything the same every single day. In shaping, we use a natural variety in the way we behave to select for approximations closer to our end goal. There's a natural variety in the way we do things. You don't do the same thing over and over again. Same thing with an animal. That's why very often you'll hear me coach through training sessions by keeping all the options open, wide open. If the animal wants to turn right or left or kind of weaving, I don't want to select too much for one approximation or one thing, because I like the variety. The more variety we have, the easier it gets. The more we do reinforce one approximation, one slice of bread, the more the animal loses variety and the harder it is going to be to get the animal to move to the next approximation. So the main thing for us in training when we're shaping is to make sure that we keep moving forward or backward. If you do too many repetitions at the same spot, you get yourself in trouble. Careful to always keep moving. Don't be afraid to take too big of a step, like you saw with that rat. We took a big step. We moved that rope down a lot, and he went, meh, nah, that's okay. When you're working through your approximations, if he would have gone, we could have moved right past that spot. But now that he didn't go, we relax criteria. It's just a constant science, collecting data. We're constantly collecting data on how our behavior influences our animal's behavior. Don't be afraid to take steps back. If you go, oh my gosh, this was too big of a step or too small of a step, always move back and forth. The most important thing I'll teach you is that in shaping, you want to keep taking steps forward or backwards. Don't stay in the same spot for too long. Shaping can happen pretty quickly. I said Hyacinth macaw and Grover at the Columbus Zoo. And because he had mobility issues, he used to have he had metabolic bone disease. He came from a facility that didn't have the right nutritional care. And so he could barely lift his feet up. So we built him his individual perch. And often when I teach a nail trim, which you'll see here in a second, I like to do it protective contact. I like to do it with a barrier between the animal and the trainer. But Grover, and I like to put their foot up on the wire so we can work on the nails. But Grover couldn't lift her feet up. So we built this contraption for her to where her feet are comfortably open. And so when you look at this video, look at the way the trainer Emily on the left and Sam on the right there work together and have a shaping plan. Dremeling the nails in this session is the first time that Grover has ever done it. And it's an individual, right? So not every bird will react this way. But for me, it's all about showing you how quickly that shaping plan can go when you have two world-class trainers work on that behavior. So you can see how quickly they shaped through the approximations. Their communication was really clear, but you could also see Emily set up the environment right, made sure that Grover had her head up. That was the first prerequisite behavior. And then Sam took the approximations. Remember the slices of bread. She moves her hands in. As soon as one of them bridges, hands come back out. Hands go in, hands go out. Anytime there's a bridge, every time she moves closer, she moves through those slices of bread really quickly. When she sees Grover, show no hesitation. Hesitation would look like her looking down, maybe reaching down, moving her foot away. All those behaviors would be indications that we might have taken too big of a step. But none of those behaviors came across. So we worked on reaching in, touching, and then there came a point where she just held on to the nail. No more letting go, no more using that negative reinforcer. We continued on through those steps really quickly. And so you can see that shaping can go really quickly, and shaping always goes at the animal's pace. Grover is in charge of that training session and should always be. Our animal should be in charge of those sessions. And so really quickly we get shaped through those behaviors. And so have an aggressive plan. When you're training, be aggressive. If the animal's ready for the next step, I might as well want to work through it. Steve Martin teaches that really well too, where you're like, you want to make sure you have a plan that is towards the end. Because if the animal does it really well, I don't want to stop and go, oh, so what are we going to do next? Should we do the other? No, I want to have a plan that goes all the way to the end. So make sure I have can work at the animal's pace. And our animals surprise us very often. So this is a graph that Susan Friedman and Carrie Clemens from the San Diego Zoo, and I think Sid Price came up with a 1 year, and I've used it ever since because it really makes a lot of sense to me to think about our shaping process and to think about how to move on and when to move on to the next approximation, the next step in our shaping process. So when we think about any behavior, we start observing behavior and we start deciding. So let's think about that penguin. When we think about that penguin that was standing in front of Emily, Barry the penguin, circling in front of her. And I imagine Barry, the first approximation, the first step for teaching that in the shaping process is for him to take a step to the right. And so that's my shaping plan, is to have him take a step to the right and get reinforced, and another step to the right and get reinforced, and 3 steps to the right and get reinforced, 4 steps to the right and get reinforced. And so those are my approximations. And so when I'm in the shaping process, in the training process, I start observing behavior, because that's the main thing we can do as trainers, is observe behavior. So when I have my plan, I've written my plan down. And the first thing I'm going to do when I get in front of my animal is start observing. I start observing the animal's behavior. I might do some antecedent arrangement. I might use some prompts. I might show some food. I might use a target. So there's some antecedent arrangement that helps the behavior along. And once I see the penguin take a step to the right, I think that's what we said, a step to the right, I have to make a decision. Did that meet or exceed my criteria? Did that do is that the step I was hoping for? If it did, then absolutely I'm going to deliver a reinforcer. He takes a step to the right, I'm going to reinforce. I'm going to give him a fish, or our parrots, I would give him a seed. And then I have a decision to make. Did he do it without hesitation? Did he do it fluently? Did he step right to the right away? Then I might raise my criteria. I might say, okay, that was really fluent. I'm going to take the next step. I'm going to look for 2 steps, or I might look for a step and a head turn. I'm going to raise my criteria, and I'm going to go back to observing that behavior. Right? So I took a step to the right, I reinforced him, and now I'm going to readjust what I do. Now, if he took that step to the right and he kind of, was looking around before it and he was kind of shuffling around, but then all of a sudden he took the step, I would say, you know what, that's with some hesitation. And if I see some hesitation, if I don't see that fluency, what I might do is I might not raise my criteria. I might go, you know what, I don't see that fluency. And I'm going to do another repetition, because my repetitions are going to build some fluency, build some confidence in that behavior. So that's when it all goes well. You still have 2 decisions to make. Do I increase my criteria, or do I keep it the same? That depends on where my fluency is. How well was the behavior performed? Now, if my behavior doesn't meet the criteria, so penguin stands in front of me and doesn't take a step to the right, doesn't do anything. Well, the first thing we're going to do is withhold my reinforcer. I'm not going to reinforce standing in front of me behavior if I give it a treat because he looks so cute, or he's trying so hard, or all those things. I'm going to reinforce another behavior, probably standing in front of me behavior. So what are we going to do? Not reinforce. Often do we start investigating our antecedents. Have I set up this animal for success? How can I help him? How can I make it clear to him what is needed for reinforcers? Can I prompt more? Can I bring a target stick in? Can I bring my baiting hand? Can I show him some food? What can I do to help this animal along in the behavior? That usually is the first step after I go, I have nothing to reinforce. How can I get something that I need to reinforce? Now, when you're standing in front of an animal thinking about it, sometimes they offer the approximation. Sometimes all of a sudden he takes a step to the right. Well, all that stuff, and then we're going to reinforce it, right? I don't care how far it is after the cue that we gave, we're going to reinforce that behavior because we're still shaping behavior. And once that we shape that behavior and we've reinforced it, then I'm going to go back to observing. But all that waiting for behavior, that's a big time hesitation. And when we see hesitation, we're going to just do another repetition of the same approximation. Repetition, they're going to build that confidence. I've said it like 10 times. So that also helps you remember that because those repetitions build confidence. Now, if he doesn't offer the approximation, I've tried and I've waited and I've stood in front of him, then I'm going to lower my criteria. So not only am I going to, did I help him prompt and all that other stuff, I'm also going to find a smaller slice of bread. If I'm waiting for the foot to move and the foot never moves, and I'm using my prompts, my antecedents to get the behavior, and it's still not working, I might be looking for too much. So maybe now I'll just wait for a head turn to the right, or maybe a look to the right will get it, or any of those other things. And once I lower my criteria, then I'm going to start observing behavior again. And now my criteria are lowered at that point. So a great way to work through it, a flow chart. Now we all know behavior is not this black and white, but this is as gray as we can get it to you. And it's a great way to help think about the approximations, especially when you're not in front of the animal. I don't have this sitting next to me going, okay, what do I do next? But it's a great one to go back to. Ooh, I got to the spot. Now what do I do? Right? Now, when you look at this Toko toucan, this is Katie on the left, and that is Avery, the vet tech on the right. She had a little fracture in her toe. And so at least we know now because Avery got an x-ray. That's a dental x-ray machine. And there's a dental plate. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but it's sitting, the black stuff under the toucan's beak is a dental plate. So Katie, the trainer, has taught the toucan, the Toko toucan, to put his foot on that plate. And what she's shaping right now is getting the Toko toucan comfortable with Avery coming in. So I think there's sound on this, so we'll talk about it after. But look at the approximations. She's taken the slices of bread, the approximation she's taking is moving that x-ray machine in closer and closer every time that we see when the Toko toucan shows us that we're comfortable with behavior. From hesitation, smaller approximation, smaller approximation. So you can see, as soon as we change the environment, Avery came in with the x-ray machine a little closer. Behavior was different. Of course, we work under current conditions and current conditions changed. So she slowly moved, took smaller approximations since that changed. The first approximation, the first repetition of the behavior, I should say, she moves all the way over and puts her foot on the x-ray plate. Now, the second time, once the x-ray machine is moved in a little bit more, Katie took smaller approximations because you could see the Toko toucan was hesitant. And you could see Katie do a repetition of coming closer to it and then moving her a little bit further through it. She did a little more prompting. So shaping is constantly going on. And that's just us shaping in the tech, the x-ray machine and the vet technician. So I like to have a plan. And I would encourage all of you guys to have a plan before you even start training. I think it's just respectful to the animal and it's respectful to ourselves. So we don't have to stand in front of the animal while they're offering up behaviors for us to figure out what to do. Many places I start with a training plan to where we decide how to work through these things. I'd like to take notes, making sure that when I take notes today, I can read them back tomorrow. If I take them today and I go, oh, what happened again? I can take notes or take video. If you can videotape your own sessions and just watch yourself, I know I don't like seeing myself either. I don't like hearing myself. I don't like seeing myself. But man, is there a lot of information. I usually hand out, whenever I go to zoos, hand out these little tripods that you can just put your cell phone in, put it in the same spot, hang it on the wall, and videotape yourself and look at your session back and you go, oh man, how did I reinforce that? How did I not see that? It's incredible to see what you can see in those things. So take notes. It's respectful to your learner. Evaluate, make sure you look at it critically, have other people look at it, send it to somebody else, going, hey, what do you see? Is there anything you can show me that I'm missing? And it's all about that behavior 360, right? The reason my company is called Behavior 360, it's about the 360 degrees of training and behavior. It's performance. How is the repetition going? How's this approximation going? Feedback. Wow, did it go really well? Did it not go so well? Did I reinforce it? Did I ignore it? How can I do that? And then revision. What can I do next time to make that better? And then we go back to performance, and we're going to go see that again. And so the training plan is really important for that. I put a link in here, so let's see if this works, to the training plan. So the training plan that I use usually has a couple things on it. This is the simplified one that I think you could easily do at your house. And I have a link to this one if you want it, so don't worry about writing it all down. There's a link at the end, so you can go to this form and fill it out for yourself, so you can help yourself be a better trainer. This is designed for many of the zoos. So animal species, primary trainer, secondary trainer. Usually if you have a couple birds, you might do one for each bird, but individually, the animal is yours and you're just the only trainer. So you're the primary trainer. You can go all through that. I like a start and a finish date. I like to know that there's a little bit of pressure on me to move the behavior along, mainly because I don't want to stay at the same spot for too long. I want to make sure that I can keep building it. Then the behavior, what's the behavior you want to get? Often it's a nail trim behavior, or it's a step up behavior, or it's a circle behavior. That's the behavior we're working on this training plan. The reason for training often is husbandry, or is it something that for the animal's care? We want to ask why. Why are you training the behavior? The feeding strategy, there's many different ways. Man, we can talk hours about motivation. I think we talked about when we talk about motivation is do we work him for treats and he gets his full bowl? Do we work him for his high value treat reinforcers in his diet and we'll just give him all his pellets? There's many different feeding strategies that we can look at working through these approximations. So if you're interested in motivation and all those things, I bet you we can talk about that another day. But there's a lot of controversy out there about managing birds' diets and all that stuff. And we're not getting into that right now, but there's definitely a level of motivation to where we have a nutritional motivation. So we want to make sure that the animal's nutritionally balanced, and there's behavioral balance. You think about your bird in the wild, they take a lot of behaviors. They make a lot of choices in their life to find their food and their water. And when we give them a full bowl of food in our house, we take away those behavioral opportunities. So we want to make sure that we can have a fine balance between those two things. So that's me going off on a tangent. I'll come home. We'll talk about that another day. Then we talk about antecedent arrangement. So if my behavior is a nail trim behavior, like we said earlier, my antecedent arrangement might be, okay, I'm getting my parrot in his enclosure on this one perch on the side. I'll move the perch to where I can reach it well and she can reach it well. And that's my antecedent arrangement. That's where I'm going to teach it. And I'm going to have a Dremel, or I have clippers, or whatever I use for that. And then we're going to talk about our approximations. Then we're going to talk about our slices of bread. Here's all the slices that we're going to take. Here's all the approximations we're going to take. And so I might say, okay, I'm going to take the approximations to get her closer to my perch. That's my first slice of bread. She's going to go to the perch, and that's like the butt end. I love that butt end of the bread. That's the start. I'm going to teach her to sit on this perch by moving her closer to the perch. That's my first approximation. My second approximation is 2 feet on the perch. My third approximation is her left foot goes up in the air. My fourth approximation is up and holds the wire. my fifth approximation, and you go through those slices of bread and you write them out. So it's clear to you what they all look like. And then expected sessions, I like to have that pressure. Like it's only going to take me half a session to get a foot up, and then it's going to get me half a session to get the foot to hold the mesh, and then it's going to get me a half a session or a full session, 2 sessions to bring in the Dremel or the emery board or the clippers, and then it's take me 2 more sessions to actually touch the toe. So I kind of know my bird, and the better you know your animal, the better you'll be able to guess on what it is. And then many zoos want you to approve, like this is approved by your supervisor. You don't have to do that. You can approve it by yourself. That's kind of fun. Yeah, I approved myself of doing this. That's kind of cool. And then at the end, it's kind of up here, but it says the changes after approval. Often are these training plans just a guide for what you do? I don't want you to, if you go, oh man, I started with the right foot and not with the left foot. I don't want you to go back and go, oh, no, 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 I don't. I have to write a whole new training plan because that's not the foot. No, finish it on the right foot or finish it on the left foot, whatever your foot you didn't decide to be. And then afterwards you go, hey, we started, the approximation was, I ended up getting the right foot easier than the left foot. And so we started on the right hand side. It's a guide. It's want to make sure that you know that you're training. But if you're like, oh, but I got a really good beak hold, great, I'll write that training plan later. Don't spend too much time on this. Spend time with your animals, but it helps you create a great way to go through your approximations and figure out what to do next. Wow, that worked really well. So here's some resources. I'll stop talking now. Here's some resources that I'd like to go to. They're the ones that I usually find all my information and people and all the things we do. And like I said, I'm going to give you some of there's some resources on the website. So I know a couple of you guys already went to it during the presentation, but if you go to the website and there's a QR code as well, become a member. I'm not one of those guys that needs you this is free access to all of this. You're not going to get anything there that that I'm going to try to make money off of you and all that stuff. They're just resources. So for free, please go there. And the only reason I have the member page is so I can kind of monitor who has access to all this information. And you guys coming to Phoenix Landing is such a great resource. And I would just want to add to that. This is our behavioral knowledge that we just have to keep spreading and spreading and spreading. So if you become a member, I'll give you access to the books and all that stuff that are out there. There's some links there. The training plan will be there. Use it for whatever you need to use it for. Spread it around. Give it to your friends. I look forward to your questions. I have some time, Anne. So please take back over and take the wheel is what the country song is, right?
I couldn't begin to do what you've done, Wouter. Well done. Well said, as always. You're a superb teacher and trainer, and you make things so palatable and easy. I love the slices of bread analogy. What a great way to envision what it means. So that's my big takeaway from today is how to talk to people about approximations using a loaf of bread, a slice. But we have some good questions already. The first one is, what if you can't figure out what the antecedents are? I mean, that's a pretty interesting question.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think so often do we try to get the antecedents arranged before, but often we don't also, the behaviors in the animal, and the animal kind of owns that environment. And there's times where we might never know. Even in the end, like today I was training a tiger and he was going to a station. This trainer was like, yeah, I'm sending him to the station. And the tiger walked to the station and walked past it and then walked back in. And I'm like, well, is he going to the station or is he walking around a water bowl? Oh, no, he's going to the station. I know that antecedent really well. I said, well, let's remove the station. Remove the station. And she sent him to the station that wasn't there anymore. Tiger walked around the water bowl. Right. And we're always investigating what the antecedents are. We're always trying to set up that environment to where the right behavior is easier than the wrong behavior. And ideally, they'll never make a mistake. Ideally, we work through that. But sometimes if you don't know what the antecedent is that you could set up, you can still train through some of the others. But that's, often I would send a video to a colleague going, what do you see? Can you see what I'm doing or not doing? Remember, antecedents don't cause behavior, right? They just set the environment up for behavior to occur. So it's not, if you don't know the antecedent, it's not the end of the world. You just start taking approximations towards the end goal, and you'll get to the behavior in a different way. But in the end, you go, oh, was that what it was? Often there's not one antecedent in the environment. It's a plethora of things. But as we work through consequences, we'll get to that spot.
Yeah, I think people can benefit from watching body language of their birds a lot more in a lot more detail. And I like that you suggested the video. In fact, on a lot of phones, you can do the slow motion video, which gives you really good detail about body language sometimes. And you can tell if they're just not ready to throw out behavior because they're clearly uncomfortable or eating or pooping or whatever, is in the way. So yeah, it's a good question though, and trial and error, I guess. So,
yep.
The next question. Oh, before we do that, we have a few IAABC members here today. So I just want to let them know that your code words are step by step. Just email us, contact@phoenixlanding.org, and we'll tell you the number for your CEUs. So the next question is, when is it better to use capturing versus shaping? Also a good question.
Yeah, I tend to always, never say always, right? But most of the time, I use shaping. 99% of the time, shaping. The reason being that when you capture behavior, you get the behavior. Absolutely beautiful, right? Great, full behavior, and you reinforce it. But down the road, if the behavior ever falls apart, you don't have anything to fall back on. You have no slices of bread to fall back on. So if I have that penguin teaching in a circle and I just waited for it to happen, and I captured the behavior of the full circle, and he continues to circle over the next year, then when I come in one day and I go circle and there's nothing that he does, I have no approximation step to step back on. If I've shaped it over time, shaped it through the successive approximations, then if he stops circling, I might go, oh, you know what? Let me take a step back in my approximations and take half the circle. And pretty quickly he goes, and we can reshape that behavior much quicker than when we would have captured it. That doesn't mean I never use capturing. I've heard it in the marine mammal industry also called margarita training, capturing, because you can just take a chair and a margarita and you bucket a fish and you wait for the dolphin to do that funny backflip and you throw a fish and then you just wait again, because you're really at the mercy of the animal to offer that full big behavior again before you can reinforce it. And so, you can wait for it for a long time between approximations or between performances, because there are no approximations before performances of the behavior. Now, many times when we talk about vocalizations in birds, so when you think about your bird vocalizing, saying hello, good morning, all those things, like some of you have probably seen Steve Martin's shows where he has the bird singing Old MacDonald or Groucho doing Camptown races. Those things are usually captured the full behavior, and then, or full sentences and then put together. Kookaburras doing their call often are trained the full behavior. And in my experience, if you capture, if you try to shape it so you get the beginning of it, often they don't finish the whole song out. They just take those small steps, and that's all they think they have to do, because we've taken the natural variety and made it too small right away. So capturing every now and then happens. If the animal does something crazy, if your bird's sitting in front of you and does a backflip, absolutely reinforce it. Anytime you can capture behavior, do it. But if you're going through an approximation, if you go in to train a certain behavior, I always say shape it. But that doesn't mean that you can't capture it.
I guess capturing would be most useful if it's just something that you suddenly see is thrown out that you're like, oh, I can live with that behavior. I like it. So let's reinforce it and work with it. But otherwise, I agree. It's better to break it down and make it a stronger behavior. Yeah.
Yep. I always, if I can reinforce a capture behavior, if I can reinforce my bird, doing a crazy wings out behavior or something, if I can reinforce it, I can imagine shaping it. But if it happens, I always imagine it like putting a penny in a jar. And the more pennies I put in a jar, the more likely it is that bird's going to do that behavior again. So if I'm working on a nail trim and he puts his wings out and does something crazy and I like that behavior, I'm going to give him a bite, and then I'm going to continue on that nail trim behavior. And
Mm.
then because I just put a penny in that jar, anytime you reinforce behavior, you increase the future frequency of the behavior. So it's going to be more likely. It might be another 2 hours, but it's going to do it every in a 2 hours again, or maybe in 2 days. But it's going to be more likely to happen because you've reinforced it.
Right. Much stronger.
Yeah.
You work with so many different kinds of animals. Do you find any kind of distinction between birds and the other animals you work with in terms of their training sessions or their ability to focus for a certain period of time?
And it's just like people. It's a study of one. It really, you just got to work with that one animal in that one moment in time, and then that set of conditions. And you could have, we all know this, you could have one hyacinth and another hyacinth, and they're different training strategies. One is a really quick thinker, so you have to work fast and you have to slow him down. One's a slower thinker, does approximations much slower, and you got to speed him up. So it's all individual. That's the beauty of this planet. We're all individuals. And so when I say hyacinth, fill in tiger, fill in snake, fill in reptiles, fill in all the fish, fill in anything. It's just there's just for me it's animals including people, and it's all the same group. And I look more at the individual and at the behavior they show me, the observable behavior, than anything else in the world.
I agree. And again, it goes back to watching the body language and knowing when your bird is like winding down and not and ending on a good note at that point instead of trying to push them to go to the next step. Yeah. Some of us want to go, go, go. And the bird's like, I'm done, enough
Yep.
treats for me today. Yeah. So
Yep. And sometimes I don't teach ending on a good note very often, because I always, like Chris Jenkins says from Natural Encounters, I'm just a guy that shows up with candy bars. Right. And so the candy bars just slow up. It's not that they're sitting there going, oh man, so disappointing. Often when the session ends, if the animal walks away, that's fine for me, because they just walked away from the candy stand, right? The popcorn stand. I'm not too worried about ending on a good note. So often when we end on a good note, we're trying to eke out behavior. Oh, one more. Now the foot goes up a little lower, but we'll take it just so we can end on a good note. I'm the first one to go, so you lost your interest? No big deal. I've tried to increase my rate of reinforcement. I've tried to rearrange my antecedents and everything else. Time for you. You're not even taking my seeds anymore. Great. I'm walking away. No big deal.
That's such an important point. Thank you for that. Especially if the animal feels empowered enough to just walk away, which is great. We want them to feel like they have that choice. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Somebody was asking about training their bird to poop. I mean, I have a whole reason to not ever want to train that, but how do you feel about that?
Well, I do a lot of work in zoos, and so I don't work with companion parrots. And you're my companion parrot person I go to, and I'm interested to find out why you don't want to train that, because there's probably a really good reason.
It's the medical side of my brain, if a bird is so well trained to do that, they feel like they can't go naturally. In some cases, they might hold it, become septic even. I just think it's convenient for us, but is it really natural for the bird in terms of its physical welfare? And I personally am not for that. I would rather set up a lot of stations so the bird is empowered and motivated to go to certain places that I can deal with, the pooping issue without trying to force it into a certain time or place.
What a cool idea. Yeah, I haven't even thought about that part. Right. That's so cool about coming together and everybody having their own information. I would have never thought of that. I think for me, often when it's about birds, I try to read their body language. Often do birds step up on your hand and they're about to, how to kind of get ready to go, and I'll hold them at a spot, and then that habit will just form. And so it doesn't become this cute thing, but it's cute. You don't have to go, because the environment is signaling that there's a reinforcer available for this.
Right.
Often when we work with primates or with other animals that might have diabetes and stuff, we will want to get a urine sample. So we would teach them to urinate. We'll capture, right? It's hard to set up the environment. It's hard to put their pinky in hot water, right? And so
Right.
to get the urination, often we capture it and we'll just reinforce it anytime we can. If we're in a session and they go to the bathroom, we'll reinforce it, or we'll know where they will go. And so for us to collect that urine sample to look at glucose levels in the blood in their urine helps us decide how much insulin to give them in that shot that day of. So we would train it that way at times, but often is it not that important for us to train it on cue? But I know you can do it, and it'd be really interesting to collect the data on are they holding it, and because it is valuable, and are they really pushing too hard when they have nothing in their system when you cue for that behavior. So yeah, I'd be interested to see to see if we can collect some data on if they're holding it or not, and really observe if they still go other places. And then when you're about to pick them up, if you can cue them, they go clean out whatever they can, and then go from there. Yeah.
It's
I'm
just
working with some rhinos on ultrasounds right now that I wish we could teach them to go to the bathroom, because a rhino ultrasound goes rectally. So
mm,
because their skin is too thick, and so they're standing there voluntarily as you insert your arm up their butt, really. And
mhm.
so there's usually a lot of boluses in there that we have to clean out. And the biggest problem is to get them all out. But they're such continual feeders that there's almost like a constant line in there. So if we could teach them to clean that out and reinforce them for it, I've played around with the idea of queuing it to see if we can get that cleaned out so we don't have to clean it out. Sorry, that got a little gross pretty quickly,
No,
but
no, it's all very interesting
yeah.
because I think we can learn from different species some of the training successes or, approximations or whatever, even
Hmm.
if it's not a bird. Yeah, it's
Hmm.
very interesting.
Yeah.
What do you think is what do you recommend people consider as their first train? If say they've never done training before and they want to put
Hmm.
all your concepts today to work, what would you recommend they start with?
Ooh, great one. There's a lot of them. Like I often there's so many trainers out there. Susan, Cassie, Melina, you guys have had before too. Um, I always talk about, like, for us, it's usually step on our hand, right? That's the biggest one we want to start with. And
For
I always
bird?
imagine, yeah, a lot of people want to have the first thing we'll do is get him on my hand. And then what do we train him? And I always imagine if I was a bird and this huge pterodactyl came up to me and goes, step up,
Right.
that'd be a huge behavior to teach. So
Yeah,
I
I think it's the
often
last
start with,
behavior. Yeah.
yep,
Yeah.
there you go. Well, you have the same experience I have.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would start in their enclosure, in their house, and I usually start with a target behavior, or just coming back and forth, just taking treats out of my hand, moving over to one spot, moving over to another spot, follow me around a target, a foot up, and then maybe from the foot up you get to a nail trim behavior. And then once you have that, then you work through those. But yeah, there's so often do we go to the big ones that we see everybody else do. But the cool thing about training behaviors that are not on your hand is you build a relationship through positive
Exactly.
interactions, right? And we always talk about, you have good relationship or bad relationship. I like to talk about a good relationship is experiences through that are positive, right? That increase behavior. And bad experiences are just the ones that you don't like. If I like you, that means that we have had positive interactions. If I don't like you, that means we had bad interactions. So the more I can give you treats, the better our interaction gets, the more I lean forward to having that good relationship with you. And the more likely I am down the road, I'm with you, Anne, to step on your hand um, if necessary.
Yeah, I think touching a bird is like the last thing we should
Hmm.
want or expect. So many people have expectations of the things they see on videos and,
Hmm.
rocking around on their shoulders or doing
Yep.
things that I think are not in the best interest of the bird or the bird's nature. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's a hard expectation to counter though, because unless people do take up some of these training ideas and build relationships in positive ways that don't involve touching, then they're like,
Hmm.
oh, disappointed.
Yeah.
But it's really
Yeah,
the
you
bird.
you think about my work, my field, right? The zoo industry, we rarely touch our animals. So
Yeah.
we get to do these crazy behaviors, crating, scaling, all those things are done without ever stepping into an enclosure, ever stepping doing anything, blood draws, injections. They're all done without being hands-on. So I think there's a lot that we could do that is not hands-on and that could just be done. And then the on-the-hand behavior is just one of the many.
Well, you worked at Natural Encounters a long time, which was
Hmm.
primarily training birds. And I know a lot of serious professionals go to that, or those of us who are just wanting to teach behavior. But in all your experience, what would you say is one of the easiest things that you saw people learn to train there? Because you used to train, I mean, there was lots of things to train there.
Hmm. I think
Husbandry, tricks, etc. Right.
yeah, we trained so much stuff there that I think it's a study of two in that instance. Let's call it study of two because it's that trainer with that animal, right? And I think that we have two learners in that aspect, and that made those workshops so great because we were, forced to work with whatever animals and whatever people we had. And so I think that's where the most interesting part is. So it was what's the easiest behavior to train completely dependent on the bird, completely dependent on the trainer. If you had a big thinking trainer, then we could easily, and a big thinking bird, then quickly we could, I'd say a crate behavior, get him on a table, get him on a crate, easy behavior. That could be just as hard. We could take 5 days to get an animal to come to a target because they've never seen a target, never seen a new person, and we have to take the approximations of the animal coming to us and taking treats. So all those, there's not a single one that I would single out going, yeah, every time, that's what I would go to. Now I'd know the birds, so I have a foot up, if you want to call it that. So I knew which birds, if I needed to teach somebody to take approximations to shape behavior, I pick a bird that doesn't know, that is comfortable with a lot of people in his environment, but hasn't learned a circle behavior yet. Because a circle is a really cool behavior to teach in approximations and then fading out our prompts and to getting that behavior going. So it really just depended on the animal and the person and the learning opportunities we had.
Right. And when in doubt, resort to target training because there's so many things you can do with target training. Yeah.
Yep.
Um, Somebody wants to know, how long is an antecedent valid?
How long is an antecedent valid?
Intriguing
That sounds like,
question. Yeah.
yeah, it's an intriguing question. I think that's a Rick Hester or Susan Friedman question for me. But I'll, in my mind, and this is not scientifically backed up. In my mind, every repetition, so every ABC has a new A. So your last antecedent influences let me say this right. So you do your ABC. That behavior is not influenced by the antecedents, but the environment has been set up. Now the consequence of that last behavior becomes the antecedent for the next behavior. So the value of that first antecedent, the Q, so if you say your Q is which is a great antecedent, if that got a reinforcer last time, now that antecedent gains value for the next, you know, for the next behavior. So the value of that antecedent goes up. If you use a punishing strategy, the value will go up in a different way. It'll be a predicting value will go up. If you see the spray bottle, that's an antecedent condition, behavior of staying on the perch will decrease. And if you spray him, the consequence of seeing the spray bottle now gets tied to the spray bottle. Now, next time he sees the spray bottle, he's going to move even further away quicker. So that antecedent has gained more information. Often, the more repetitions, so that changes. So it's not a black and white, this antecedent, the history. So his hand raised or his parent raised is one of those distant antecedents, which will slowly over time will lose or gain some more information. And the more immediate antecedents, I think every repetition will get it, will get information. So I think it's fluid, I should say, fluent as well, but fluid to where after every repetition of behavior, it's almost like they all um, change value. It's like somebody just got me onto fantasy football. I'm a Dutch guy. I like to play football with my feet, not with my hands. And so every week, the value of your player changes. And I think every every time you reinforce behavior, or punish behavior, influence behavior, the value of your antecedent changes, just like it did in the past. It does in the past. Does it answer the question? As you can
I
see,
think
I'm working
so.
through it.
Yeah. I mean, I think we have learned that consequences are what drives future behavior, right? So if the consequences have been good and the behaviors become strong, then you can almost put that animal in any environment and they might, regardless of the antecedents, and they might still perform the behavior because it's been strong. So the antecedent is not so important anymore, right? I mean,
yeah, for us, when we do like, a lot of these programs in zoos and getting animals out in on TV sets and all that stuff, we make sure that change becomes normal. So antecedent change becomes normal. So we're all constantly changing antecedents. We're constantly moving the animal into a new environment and having it have positive interactions to where that environment doesn't matter anymore. The change of the environment doesn't matter anymore, but it's gradual. It's shaped over time. They go from one stall to the next stall. So we're still in a stall. We're still in the same area. We're still at the same neighbors. And then we might go to a stall at the end, and then we might go to an open area at the end. So it's still close, and slowly but surely we build out this antecedent environment that just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, gradually, with a plan, not just take them outside and let's go.
I haven't kept up with the evolution of the science of behavior language, but are we still calling that generalizing behavior, basically?
We still do. I also am more focused on training trainers. And so again, that would be, Susan and Rick and Behavior Works. Those guys are, for me, the pinnacle of teaching the science of behavior change. And there, something might have changed, but I still teach generalization of behavior.
Okay.
An
I
animal
like to use
performs a
that too.
behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah. Animal
Okay, good.
performs a behavior under a set circumstance. And then when you start changing the environment gradually and the behavior still performed under those circumstances, that's generalization of that behavior.
Great. And I'm sure that you mostly work with what I would label exotic animals, rhinos, parrots, you're not working with cats and dogs for the most part. You're working with unusual animals. Do you have any sense of how much of their natural behavior plays a part? I mean, I know you can't study the wild nature of every animal you work with, but having just come back from Brazil, I'm always observing bird behavior in the wild and thinking about how that affects my bird in captivity. And I just wonder if that's an issue that you consider.
I bounce it back to Susan often. She, one year, and she has so many brilliant things that she says. One year she said, the difference between wild behavior and behavior under human care? It's just the environment. That's it. In Brazil, those parrots get feedback from the wild environment. If they land on this branch and it breaks, they're going to stop landing on it. If they find food in this area, they're going to continue to go to that area. Your bird in your care will continue to go to this food bowl that has food in it. And if you move it to the other side, they'll go there once or twice, and then pretty soon they'll go to the other food bowl. They're getting information from the environment there as well. So all we're doing, for us to think about trying to mimic the wild is healthy and is smart, but to think that the wild is the pinnacle for where we need to be behavior wise, so they have to fly, they have to do all these things. Yes, physically, absolutely. But from a behavior standpoint, we want to give them as many choices as they have in that wild environment because they're designed for that wild environment. So even for, you think about the cheetahs, and they run, once a day for a long time, and then they lay down for the rest of the day pretty much. And so when you can give them that outlet, that's a great way to do it. But to think that I can take this cheetah that is at the zoo and put it in Africa and it'll just do fine because all the behavior's pre-programmed, that's not it. No, they're not pre-programmed. They need to learn all these things. And so same thing with a cheetah from Africa, putting it in a zoo is not great either. So that's why we have all these programs to make sure that all these animals are very comfortable in their environments that we put them in. And, Mother Nature is not the nicest either. So there's a lot more challenges that animals have in their wild environment than they would under human care.
Indeed, definitely. But at least they have more choice for the most part, so they can be empowered to make decisions that we don't often provide them with here. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
and choice is really about like opportunities how do I say that well? You know, the more I always say that the more behaviors you give the animal the function, the more choices they have. If you can only go right and left, you have choice, but there's only two. What
Mhm.
if you can increase that by teaching up and down and halfway left and halfway right? Now there's more choices. Even though you're in the same environment, there's more choices. And the more choices you have in your environment, the more control you have over your environment. And that's your primary reinforcer. It's a primary reinforcer to have more choices. So I think for us to look at ourselves as the provider of choices by being good trainers and not trying to read their minds, not trying to read their minds, not trying to figure out what they're thinking. And I see it often in a training session where the animal walks away and we go, well, he has a choice to move away. Yes. And we have a lot of reinforcers that we can throw at it to see if he wants to come back and work with us still. So there's a lot that we can do to mimic the amount of choices that they have in their wild environment as well.
Mhm. One last question, because we're so grateful for your time.
Yeah.
In working with our families, a lot of times we encounter the use of labels, labels. It's just what we do as humans. We
Yeah.
label things based on our experience, but that doesn't always give the bird the benefit of understanding the situation. Can you just address labels? Because I think we can never talk about it enough.
Oh, I know. Labels, man. Labels is what we fight constantly. And like you said so beautifully, we are a species that likes to label and tries to figure out what's in the animal and what they're thinking and what their emotions are. And um, if we, like we said, like the slide we started this presentation with, if we can focus on looking at what the animal does, right? That's the main thing. What is the animal doing? That's the behavior that we're looking for. So if we can focus on what the animal does and not what he's thinking or doing or anything else, because once we start labeling the animal, a great one as well, he's aggressive. So I can't work with him because he's aggressive. That has a lot of side effects. One, it blames the animal. So now he's aggressive. And often you'll hear me ask, well, what does that look like? What does aggressive look like? Um, it looks like him running at the bars, mouth open or beak open, eye pinning, feathers up, running at me. That looks like a great. Okay, great. Now I can see what that looks like to you and me, and now we can see the same thing. Okay, great. That's what you see as aggression. Awesome. Let's go from there. And now we can rearrange our antecedents. Maybe I can put two food bowls in to where I can drop a half a peanut into one bowl while you're still showing me comfortable behavior, which looks like comfortable is another great label, right? Which looks like comfortable eyes, feathers down, maybe sitting on one foot, feathers all sleek. You drop a piece and you step away. He comes over and gets a bite. Now we've seen some calm behavior. Often does our label become a one of those preconceived notions, right? One of those self-fulfilling prophecies. Well, I told you he's aggressive, and now all we see is aggressive. We get reinforced by seeing those behaviors, but we forget to look at him when he does it well. Well, he's just being good now, but usually he's aggressive. Hold on. We need to also reinforce that behavior. So if you want to be a better trainer and a better caregiver of your bird, you step away from those labels, those um, human characteristics we put on animals, and you look at current conditions. And it's just the really current conditions and what the animal is doing. What's the animal doing? That is really the most important thing. So we can just focus on observable behavior, and it happens constantly. So yeah, it's the biggest hurdle we throw ourselves.
It
And
is.
yeah, yep. And Susan Friedman started the Unlabel Me movement,
Mhm.
which
Yeah.
we see those cards everywhere. And if you want to read more on it, she writes about it beautifully as well. So be a better trainer and label your animals. Man, you'd be surprised where you can get.
Yeah. I recently started telling people if you insist on using a label of aggressive, change it to defensive because it's not the responsibility is on you to change
Hmm.
your behavior, not on the bird to change its behavior. Yeah.
Yep,
There-
right. And it's fight or flight, right? That's
yeah.
usually when you see the aggression.
Yeah.
So, yep.
Exactly. Well, any big takeaways you want to leave us with?
I think you hit a great one. labels are just are your thing. And then once you've labeled an animal, then start thinking about your shaping plan. When is he doing it right? Often we forget it, that when the animals and the people that we work with are doing things right. Well, that person is just such a, it's always late. And then when they're finally on time, we go, see, you're supposed to do that. So I'm not going to say anything, instead of
Mhm.
going, hey, thanks for coming in on time. Or here, let's grab coffee. Or, there's other reinforcers we have. Same thing with our animals. Once we have that label of, aloof or aggressive or all that stuff, what's the smallest step towards the end goal? How can we shape better behavior at that point? So could we, like I just suggested, have two bowls in there and reinforce them for calmer behavior, and then slowly shaping myself back in, like we saw Avery in the toucan with the X-ray. She was initially 5 feet away, but slowly over time, when the bird showed us comfortable behavior, we've reinforced that behavior, and now we can stand close, and now we can give him a seed, and now we see calm body language near us, where in the past we saw all that aggression. So did we fix aggression? No, we just reinforce calm, attentive behavior. And so get rid of your labels and look at your shaping plans. Steal those shaping plans off the website. Take them, take them, take them. It'll take me a little bit to let everybody in that is interested. So give me a little bit of time. But take them, make them your own, adjust them, and really start thinking about what's the smallest step. Most of us are big thinkers. So when you think big, think smaller. There's small steps in there. A look is an approximation, and it doesn't have to be a full body turn when I'm trying to turn a circle. So yeah, keep training, keep looking at your animals, look at what they're doing, and then start using your reinforcers to shape behavior.
Perfect. Well, I hope we've given you a lot of positive reinforcement today, and you will consider the consequences will be that you will consider coming back again, Wouter, because you're an awesome teacher, and we've been so lucky to have you twice now. So grateful. And I hope everybody goes out today and reinforces something that they see positive in their lives and gives it some credit and recognition, because it makes you feel better too, to do things that feel good. So
It sure does.
it does.
Well, it was nice to talk to you guys. I'm always happy to talk to you guys. I got to go train an owl monkey now. So twist my
exciting.
arm. They're
So
really cute.
You have an exciting life. We're all grateful to be a part of it. So don't forget, everybody, come back October 19th with Dr. McCleary. She's a wonderful teacher as well, and talking about a very important subject when it comes to the medical aspects of your bird. So thanks again, Wouter. Thanks everybody
Anytime.
for today. We're glad you could come, and I'm sure a lot of people will be watching this again because there was so much we could benefit from. So thanks. We'll see you all later. Bye,
guys. Happy training.
Appreciate it.